If I'd have done all the things I was supposed to have done, I'd be really tired.
For years, Willie Nelson stayed quiet about one of the deepest friendships in country music. However, now at 92, he's finally ready to talk, and when Willie speaks, the world listens. His voice carries decades of memories, laughter, heartbreak, and wild stories. This time, it's all about Merle Haggard. What he reveals isn't just touching, it's unforgettable. Curious to find out? Stay tuned. The Early Bond. Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard didn't grow up in the same place, and their lives didn't start off the same way, but later in life, they became close friends through their love of music. They had both faced hard times and didn't always follow the rules of the music industry. That helped them connect. Their friendship didn't happen overnight. It grew over time as they worked together, shared ideas, and respected each other's style. Even though they were different, they shared many similarities in their lifestyles and music-making processes. Before they were famous, they were just two men trying to find their place in the world through their songs. Willie Nelson was born on the 29th of April, 1933, in a small town called Abbott, Texas. Merle Haggard came into the world a few years later, on the 6th of April, 1937, in Oildale, California. Though they were born in different places and had very different childhoods, they both grew up during hard times in America. Their early lives were shaped by poverty, family struggles, and a deep love for music. Willie's grandparents raised him during the Great Depression. He got his first guitar when he was just 6 years old and started writing songs by the time he was 7. Music was always around him through church hymns, country tunes, and gospel songs. He played in local bands as a teenager and worked as a radio DJ before heading to Nashville to chase his dream. On the other hand, Merle's childhood was rough. His family lived in a converted boxcar, and his father passed away when Merle was only 9. That loss hit him hard. He started getting into trouble, skipping school, and eventually ended up in juvenile detention. Later, he spent time in San Quentin prison. Interestingly, even in prison, music was his escape from the moment. He played in the prison band and was inspired by a performance from Johnny Cash. That moment helped him turn his life around. Now, here's where things get interesting. Willie and Merle didn't meet when they were kids. They met as grown men, already famous in the country music world. However, when they did meet, it was like two old souls finding each other. They had both lived through pain, poverty, and rejection. They had also both fought to make music on their own terms, outside the rules of Nashville's polished country scene. That's why they were called outlaws, not because they broke laws, but because they broke the mold. Their bond grew stronger in the 1970s and 80s. They toured together, wrote songs together, and even recorded albums as a duo. One of their most famous collaborations was the song Pancho and Lefty, released in 1983. It became popular and showcased how well their voices and styles blended. Willie's smooth, laid-back singing matched perfectly with Merle's emotional delivery. They didn't just sing together, they understood each other. They had both been through heartbreak, loss, and hard times. They both believed in telling the truth through music, and both had a deep respect for the working-class people who listened to their songs. Even when they weren't working on music, they stayed close. They joked around, shared stories, and supported each other through personal struggles. Willie once said that Merle was one of the greatest songwriters he had ever known. Merle, in turn, admired Willie's fearless spirit and his ability to stay true to himself. Their friendship lasted decades. When Merle passed away on the 6th of April 2016, on his 79th birthday, Willie was heartbroken. He didn't speak much about it at first. Over time, he began to share memories, stories, and feelings that he had kept inside. At 92 years old, Willie finally opened up about the bond they shared, the music they made, and the love he still had for his old friend. Before we look into Willie Nelson's revelation, let's look at how these two men shaped country music and made a difference in the industry before Merle passed away. The music that held them together.
Whether we like it or not, best I can tell, the world's gone to hell.
Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard performed together, and their music came from a place of real understanding. They made songs that told the truth, that felt lived in. It was the kind of partnership that made an impact. Their first big project together was the album Pancho and Lefty, released in 1983. That album became a classic. The title track, Pancho and Lefty, written by Townes Van Zandt, was already a great song. But when Willie and Merle sang it together, it became unforgettable. Willie's smooth voice and Merle's rough edge gave the song a perfect balance. It went to #1 on the country charts and stayed popular for decades. That album also featured other songs, such as Reasons to Quit, which explored the struggle of breaking bad habits. It was personal and honest, and fans could tell it came from real-life experience. Another track, Half a Man, showed their ability to take older songs and give them new life. The whole album felt like two friends saying the truth through music. They didn't stop there. In 1987, they released Seashores of Old Mexico. It wasn't as big as Pancho and Lefty, but it still showed their chemistry. The title track was a Merle Haggard song, and Willie joined in to make it feel fresh. Their voices blended like they had been singing together forever. Years passed, and they kept working on their own music, but they always found time to come back together. In 2007, they released Last of the Breed with another country legend, Ray Price. It was a tribute to traditional country music. Willie and Merle sang songs like My Life's Been a Pleasure and Don't Get Around Much Anymore. It was clear they weren't just making music. They were honoring the roots of the genre. Then came their final album together, Django and Jimmy, released in 2015. It was a tribute to Django Reinhardt and Jimmy Rogers, two musicians they admired. The album was full of songs that felt like conversations between old friends. Unfair Weather Friend was one of the most touching tracks. It spoke about being there for someone no matter what. Fans saw it as a reflection of their own friendship. Other songs on that album included It's All Going to Pot, which was playful and funny, and Missing Old Johnny Cash, which was a tribute to another friend they had lost. The album went to #1 on the country charts, showing that even after all those years, people still loved hearing them together. Their live performances were just as special. They toured together many times, sharing the stage and exchanging songs. They didn't treat it like a business deal. It felt like two friends having fun. They played songs like Okie from Muskogee, Mama Tried, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain, and Whiskey River. Even if the songs weren't written together, they made them feel shared. They also sang My Own Peculiar Way, The Fugitive, and The Fight Inside of Me. These songs displayed their distinct styles, but when they sang together, it worked better. Willie's guitar, trigger, and Merle's voice created a sound that was both strong and gentle. They sang about love, loss, freedom, regret, and hope. They didn't try to be perfect. They just tried to be real. That's why fans connected with them, and that's why their songs still matter. When Merle passed away, Willie kept singing. He talked about Merle with love and respect. He said Merle was like a brother. Their last tour together had been full of laughter, music, and memories. Willie finished the tour in Merle's honor. Today, their songs are still played. People still listen to Pancho and Lefty and feel something. They hear Unfair Weather Friend and think about loyalty. They watch old videos of Willie and Merle on stage and smile. The music they made together wasn't just good, it lasted. The ups and downs of fame. Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard were two of the biggest names in country music, but fame didn't always make things easy for them. Even though they were loved by fans and respected by other musicians, they had to deal with a lot of problems, some personal, some professional, and some that came from just being famous. When they worked together, things didn't always go smoothly. One of their most famous songs, Pancho and Lefty, was recorded in a strange way. Willie woke Merle up at 5 a.m. and said, "I think I found us a song." Merle had been awake for 5 days straight, drinking cayenne pepper and fasting, and he was exhausted. Willie had the lyrics scribbled on a paper bag. They went into the studio and recorded it right then. Merle didn't even remember singing it. The next day, he asked if he could record his part again, but the song was already on its way to New York. That's how fast things move sometimes, and it shows how fame could push them into working even when they were tired or not fully ready. They also had to deal with the pressure of always being in the spotlight. Willie and Merle were known as outlaws in country music because they didn't follow the rules. That made them popular, but it also made things harder. Record labels didn't always support their choices. They wanted Willie and Merle to sing songs that would sell, not songs that told the truth about life. However, Willie and Merle didn't care about being perfect. They cared about being real. That caused tension with the music industry. Money was another issue. Fame brought them wealth, but it also brought problems. Willie had trouble with the IRS and ended up owing millions in taxes. Merle had his own financial struggles, especially early in his career. They both made a lot of money, but they also lost a lot. Fame didn't protect them from bad deals or expensive mistakes. Substances and alcohol were part of their world too. They were surrounded by parties, long nights, and the stress of touring. Both men had times when they drank too much or used substances to cope. That affected their health and sometimes made it hard to work, but they kept going. They leaned on each other and on their music to get through the rough patches. Even their friendship had ups and downs. Although they were different, they respected each other. Willie was more relaxed, while Merle could be intense. They didn't always agree, and sometimes they argued, but they always came back together. They knew their bond was special, and they didn't let fame tear it apart. Touring was another challenge. Being on the road sounds exciting, but it's also exhausting. Long hours, different cities every night, and the pressure to perform flawlessly wore them down. Sometimes they were sick, sometimes they were tired, but they still showed up for their fans. That kind of dedication is rare, and it came with a cost. Despite all these struggles, Willie and Merle kept making music. They didn't let fame change who they were. They stayed true to their style, their stories, and their friendship. Their final album together, Django and Jimmy, was a quiet celebration of everything they had been through. It wasn't flashy, it was honest. Just like them. Fame gave them a platform, but it also gave them problems, and they faced those problems head on. They didn't hide their mistakes. They sang about them, and that's why people still listen to their music today. It's not just about the sound, but about the truth behind it. When Merle passed away, it wasn't exactly a shock to those around him since he had struggled with health challenges over the years. Merle Haggard's health struggles and eventual demise. It started gradually. Merle Haggard had always been a tough man, the kind who had survived prison, poverty, and hard living. However, by the late 2000s, his body began signaling that it couldn't keep up with the relentless pace he had set. In 2008, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, and surgeons had to remove a part of his lung. That would have slowed down most people, but Merle still got back on stage and continued touring, fueled by a deep love for his music and his fans. The years went on, but the damage didn't reverse. Between the cancer, heart problems, and a lifetime of smoking and hard living, his health became increasingly fragile. By late 2015, pneumonia settled in, and this time, it wasn't a brief bout. It hung around, stubborn and mean. He was hospitalized more than once, first in December 2015, again in March 2016, and had to cancel shows, something he almost never did. That was the clearest sign that something was seriously wrong. His breathing grew worse as the infection refused to let go. Then, on the 6th of April, 2016, Merle Haggard passed away right on his 9th birthday. According to his son, Ben, Merle had even said days earlier that he thought that day might be his last. Somehow, he knew. His passing hit people hard, not just because a legendary artist was gone, but because he had held on so fiercely to the life he had built from nothing. Despite the pain, he had kept singing until the very end. It was as if music was the only medicine that ever really worked for him. By the time of his passing, Merle had 6 known children, 11 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. Despite his rough edges and complicated past, he was known to be a proud father who deeply loved his children and found joy in seeing them carry on his musical legacy. Merle Haggard's family life was as colorful and layered as his music. He was married 5 times, and from those relationships came a large and musically gifted family. His first marriage was to Leona Hobbs in 1956. Together, they had 4 children, Dana, Marty, Kelly, and Noel. Marty and Noel followed in their father's footsteps and became country singers themselves. Marty even toured with Merle's band, The Strangers, and earned a nomination for Top Male Vocalist at the ACM Awards in 1985. After divorcing Leona, Merle married fellow country singer Bonnie Owens in 1965. Though they eventually divorced, they remained close. Bonnie was even the maid of honor at Merle's 3rd wedding to Leona Williams in 1978. That marriage lasted 5 years. His 4th marriage was to Debbie Parrott, which ended in 1991. In 1993, Merle married Teresa Ann Lane, and they stayed together until his passing away in 2016. They had 2 children, Ben and Janessa. Ben Haggard became a talented guitarist and singer, often performing his father's songs and keeping his legacy alive. Interestingly, Merle also had a seventh child, Scott Haggard, whom he didn't learn about until 2004. Like his half-brothers, Scott pursued a music career and pays tribute to Merle through his performances. Merle Haggard's demise wasn't just a loss to his family, but to the country music industry at large. They didn't just lose a legend, they lost a voice that carried the stories of working people, outlaws, and dreamers for more than 5 decades. The reaction was instant and emotional. Tributes poured in from fans, fellow musicians, and even people outside the country scene who respected what Merle stood for. Tributes to Merle Haggard.
On April 6th, on his 79th birthday, country music lost a towering figure, the late and great Merle Haggard.
It wasn't long before social media lit up with messages from artists like Dolly Parton, Keith Urban, Toby Keith, and Brad Paisley. They didn't just say rest in peace, they shared stories. They talked about how Merle's songs had shaped their own music, how his honesty had inspired them to be brave in their writing. Some called him the greatest country songwriter of all time. His wife, Teresa Ann Lane, posted a touching photo tribute on his official Instagram page. She said she missed him every single day and thanked fans for keeping his memory alive. She captioned, "To all the fans and family that loved Merle, today is that special day that Merle was called home. That is one thing we cannot control in our lives. When it is our time to die, it seems like only yesterday we lost this man that I loved, and you all loved so well. He is surely missed by me and our kids. I know he is also missed by you. So play a song for the man today that touched us all so many times with his music and with his heart. I miss you, Merle, every single day. You're everywhere I look and everything I hear. I know we are only apart for a while. Love, Teresa." It wasn't just a public statement, it was a glimpse into the quiet grief of someone who had shared life with him. Merle's funeral was held privately, but it was filled with music. Marty Stewart, another country star and close friend, officiated the service. Friends, family, and bandmates gathered to sing, cry, and remember the man who had given them so much through his songs. Even years later, tributes continue. His son Ben Haggard, now a powerful musician himself, continues honoring his father through live performances of Merle's songs. At tribute concerts, Ben sang "Amazing Grace" and "Okie from Muskogee" with a voice that eerily and beautifully carries Merle's spirit. There were also massive tribute events. One of the most memorable was "Sing Me Back Home," the music of Merle Haggard, held a year after his demise in Nashville. Dozens of artists performed, from Keith Richards and Miranda Lambert to Jamie Johnson and Loretta Lynn. Each song wasn't just a cover, it was a farewell, a love letter, and a moment of musical gratitude. Dolly Parton called Merle a true American icon and said his voice and stories would live on longer than any of us. She remembered how Merle had suggested she write the tribute for his memorial program, saying she was one of the few who truly understood the weight of a country song. She said, "We've lost one of the greatest writers and singers of all time. His heart was as tender as his love ballads. I loved him like a brother. Rest easy, Merle." Chris Christopherson shared how Merle was one of the great poets of American music and described how deeply Merle's honesty and hard living had shaped the raw, unapologetic truth in his songs. Chris later helped perform a heartfelt 3-song set at Merle Haggard's private funeral on the 9th of April, 2016, held at Haggard's Ranch in Palo Cedro, California. He sang "For a Moment of Forever," "Sing Me Back Home," and "Poncho and Lefty" as a duet with Micah Nelson, Willie Nelson's son. During "Sing Me Back Home," a gust of wind scattered Christopherson's lyric sheets, and he joked that Merle had done it on purpose, adding a touch of humor to the emotional tribute. The entire ceremony was filled with music, just as Haggard would have wanted it. Fans still play "Mama Tried," "Okie from Muskogee," and "Silver Wings," not just because they're classics, but because they carry Merle's truth. Merle didn't chase fame, he chased meaning, and when he passed, the world didn't just mourn a musician. It mourned a storyteller who never stopped telling it like it was. Among these tributes, one that stood out was from his longtime friend Willie Nelson. Initially, people expected him to publicly express grief, but he took his time. Merle Haggard wasn't just a friend, he was like a brother to him, and his demise came sooner than Willie's, though. He was heartbroken. He didn't rush to speak, but when he did, it was with deep love. What did Willie say about his friend, Merle's demise, and why did he wait so long? Will his revelation at 92 change what we thought about their friendship and collaboration? Let's find out. Willie Nelson's revelation. At 92,
We shared some high times. I would sing some songs he wrote.
Willie Nelson's tribute to Merle Haggard was perhaps the most intimate. It wasn't just a few kind words, it was a deeply personal farewell wrapped in music, memory, and love. A year later, in 2016, on what would have been Merle's 80th birthday, Willie released a song called He Won't Ever Be Gone, written by Gary Nicholson the morning Merle passed away, and performed it with quiet reverence. It was the closing track on his album God's Problem Child. Willie said that as soon as he heard the song, he knew he had to record it. It was his way of saying that Merle's spirit still lived on in the music, in the memories, and in the hearts of those who knew him. In the song, Willie sang, "Got the news this morning, knew it would be a tough day. Someone so much larger than life, can't believe he could pass away. When it comes to country music, he's the world. And it wouldn't be all it is without Merle, but he won't ever be gone. His songs live on." Those lines say everything. Willie didn't just admire Merle. He saw him as part of the foundation of country music itself. He said in interviews that their friendship was one of those really good friend things. They had toured together, recorded 6 albums, and shared a #1 record with Django and Jimmy in 2016. Willie was proud of Merle for still being out there, performing with his band and staying true to his music. The recording of He Won't Ever Be Gone was special too. Willie's producer, Buddy Cannon, asked Ben Haggard, Merle's son, to play guitar on the track. Ben brought that classic Bakersfield sound, just like Merle's old bandmate Roy Nichols used to play. It added a layer of authenticity and emotion that made the tribute even more powerful. He kept it simple, heartfelt, and honest, just like Merle would have wanted. He said that Merle was larger than life, and that even though he was gone, his music would never fade. Even at 92, Willie Nelson still talks about Merle Haggard like he was just on stage yesterday. He doesn't lean on fancy tributes or long interviews. It's always raw, simple, and straight from the heart. What Willie revealed again and again is just how deep their bond ran. He said Merle wasn't just a friend, he was family. They didn't just play together, they lived the music side by side. Willie described him as the kind of artist whose songs told the truth and whose voice could cut through anything. You could hear pain, joy, pride, rebellion, all of it in Merle's music. Willie believed country music wouldn't be what it is without Merle, and he meant it. He recalled the times they toured together, laughed together, even recorded their last album, Django and Jimmy, when Merle was already sick. Willie said he was amazed by how strong Merle stayed, still getting on stage and performing with grit, never letting the audience see the battle he was fighting. Willie didn't use dramatic words, he just called him a real one. And that tribute song, He Won't Ever Be Gone, Willie didn't write it, but when he heard it on the day Merle passed away, he said it felt like someone put his emotions into music before he could. He sang those words like a promise. Willie's voice was rough and honest, and when he said, "But he won't ever be gone, his songs live on," he meant it in the most literal way. It's how he keeps Merle close. Willie still lights up when Merle's name comes up. Sometimes he tells stories, sometimes he just sits quietly, eyes a little misty. Nonetheless, every time he picks up his guitar, you know Merle's spirit is there too, not as a memory, but as a rhythm that never stopped. Willie Nelson, today.
Well, whenever we're touring, I spend all the time out here, except when I go in to do a show, because I've got everything I need here.
Willie Nelson is still living the life he loves. He's not retired, not slowing down, and definitely not done making music. He still performs live, records albums, and travels with his band, which now includes his sons. Willie's voice may be older, but it still carries that same warmth and honesty that fans have loved for decades. He recently released an album called Oh What a Beautiful World, which features songs by his friend Rodney Crowell. Willie said he loves singing other people's songs just as much as his own, and this album proves it. He's already working on his next one too. That's just how he is, always creating, always moving forward. Willie's health has had its ups and downs. He's battled emphysema, pneumonia, and even COVID-19. In 2025, he had to give up smoking weed, something he was famous for. He said his lungs just couldn't take it anymore. He has tried edibles, but they don't feel the same to him. He's adjusting, staying clean, and focusing on staying healthy. His family is a big part of his life. Willie has 8 children, 5 daughters, and 3 sons. Some of them are musicians, like Lucas and Micah, who often perform with him on stage. Willie says playing music with his children is one of the greatest joys in his life. His daughter Paula is also a singer and radio host. His late son Billy passed away in 1991, and Willie has spoken about how hard that loss was. He also discovered a daughter named Renee later in life, and they built a relationship before she passed away in 2017. Willie's wife, Annie D'Angelo, has been by his side since 1991. She recently spoke out when a TV channel claimed their son, Lucas, was taking care of them. Annie corrected the story, saying she still takes care of Willie herself and loves doing it. Even though many of his old bandmates have passed away, Willie's current band still feels like family. His sons play with him, and other musicians connected to his longtime friends have joined in. They don't use set lists. Willie just plays what feels right, and the band follows his lead. It keeps things fresh and spontaneous, just the way he likes it. Willie Nelson isn't just surviving at 92. He's thriving. He's still writing, singing, and sharing the stage with the people he loves most. His music continues to speak to generations, and his spirit hasn't faded one bit. He's the last leaf on the tree, as he sings in one of his recent songs, and he's not ready to fall. Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard didn't just build a career together, they built a legacy, and that legacy lives on in every note they sang, every lyric they wrote, and every moment they shared with their fans. What are your thoughts on their friendship and Willie Nelson's revelation? Share in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.